Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hello, Hunter. I want to
Hello,
kick.
Tats.
Hello. I want to kick today's Life of Leverage pod off on the topic of VAs because
Hmm.
since I got a VA, I can safely say like it's changed how I view delegating and everything like that. And every single time I mention it to someone, and like even people who've been in business for a while or pretty established, I'm like, oh, you should. Do you have a VA? And like, no, 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 no. Or they'll have like hundreds of thousands of followers, and like I'll be like, oh, do you have a VA for anything? And they're like, no. Like, what would I get them to do? And literally every single person, without fail, says, what would I get them to do? And I was the same as well before getting one. But once you get one,
Mm-hmm.
you realize that there are so many things that you could do that you just never even think about. So, yeah, I know you've recently just got yourself a VA. So, yeah, tell me a little bit about your experience with one, why you ended up finally going for it, and kind of some things that you've learned.
Yeah, I was one of those people too. Like I remember you telling me you were like you're the systems guy. You should get a VA. Like imagine the things you could do in the systems that you could set up for them. And it's like yeah, but what would I have them do? I remember asking myself that question, and then my VA started work for me on Monday, and it's now Thursday. We're recording this, and I don't know what I was doing before. Like to be frank, it's literally amazing. Like to put in context, I had my girlfriend's birthday on Wednesday, and normally I would schedule things out so I can be in that moment, be present, not worry about work. It's something that I'm working on, not trying to be bogged down in work all the time, like it's typical for entrepreneurs like us to do. But I just texted my VA and I just brain dumped, all of these things that I wish I could get done today, but I just don't think I'll have the time, or I know that I won't have the time, and I know that he doesn't really know how to do it. But I'll just text him like I want, besides the regular things we've already established, like checking my DMs and my emails, like doing things that just take a little bit of time, like 5, 10, 20 minutes for me that now he is doing, that's in mental bandwidth that I don't have to worry about. I'm letting him just kind of figure things out for me. And that's been amazing. Like learning that process that I don't necessarily need to do everything. And also learning that just because it'll take me 20 minutes to do something and it might take him an hour, that doesn't mean that's bad. Like that's okay. And because that's 20 minutes that I don't have to spend doing that. That's energy that I'm not spending on that I can focus on something that's more high value. And that whole process so far, I mean, it's literally been like 3 full days, but just that whole process so far has been really fun. And yeah, I'm glad you pushed me to finally get a VA because it's been 3 days and I don't know what I was doing before. I can't imagine what it's been like for you now that you've had one for a couple months now and you're kind of, getting really dialing that in, I'd imagine.
Mm. I think you just start to realize why people almost do have personal assistants because, kind of as you said there, like everyone's like, "Oh, the VA is going to take so much longer for me to do this," or like the quality is going to be so much lower, so I might as well just do it myself. But if you put your hourly rate high enough and say you're charging a VA $7 an hour, sort of thing, if it takes them an
Hmm.
hour for you to do a job that was 5 minutes, over time, that's still going to be worth it because those 5 minute tasks over time they add up, they break up your day. There's something you have to think about. And so, yeah, I think the more you can get rid of those tiny admin little tasks as much as possible, the more you can just kind of have regular work. And I think what you said there is also really good of just like you just brain dump stuff to him and see what he could do because everyone's like, oh my God, I have to give them like this really clear guide of what they have to do here, what they have to do here. Like I heard some great advice before from a guy who like I think he has 4 personal VAs, and he ties it into his business where every single employee in his business also has a VA. And so the first thing that he will tell someone to do is just like record your day on Loom, like 3 hours, just you
Mm.
doing work. Send that to the VA, just be like, hey, watch this. And like, is there anything that you can see here that you think you could do? And the other things that you can do that I've done a lot of is I might be paying someone to do something, or I might just be doing it myself. But I'd be like, oh, hey, could you try and do this as well? Just to see like how close what I would do and you would do sort of align. And then based off of that, you can give them feedback. And so over time, they get better and better and better, producing like the exact result that you want them to produce. So it becomes less and less work. And so yeah, I think it's super valuable, and I'm also so happy how happy you are with one, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, it's been amazing. And like as you were speaking about it gets better and better with time, all I can think of is like we're basically just training an AI model to like replicate what we want to do.
Except it's our
Sorry.
little
My
legend of a VA.
Yeah, having a VA, it really teaches me more about like what is high leveraged because you have an idea of it, like we all do if you're trying to build a business or build an audience, whatever sort of leverage you're trying to build for your life. You get you do things so often for so long that you don't realize that what you're doing isn't actually high leveraged anymore. It was at one time, but now that you're in a different place than you were before, what got you here isn't going to get you there. So you need to change your perspective, like shift what you're doing to get to your goals. And it sounds maybe like cliche or corny, but I've experienced this and a number of people I talk to as well. We don't, it's more difficult to realize what we've done in the past to get us where we are has now become safe and familiar because we've done it. We can look back and see there's empirical evidence that what we did has gotten us here. So, in our brains, it makes sense that if we continue to do this, we will either stay here or go to the next place. But it really doesn't work like that. Like, you need to change what you're doing. And having a VA has allowed me to see what can I actually do that is now going to take me to that next level? Because before I was just so bogged down in what I have been doing because I needed to just keep doing it to maintain. But eventually you need to go past maintaining, as we all know. Like we want to go to the places that we have set out. And yeah, it's just really changed my perspective on how I look at leverage and what I'm doing every day versus what I know I should be doing to get where I want to go. Because we all have that, like, we all, at least I really believe that we all know in our mind, like, what that thing is that we should be doing. And a lot of the times it's really easy to just distract ourselves and pretend like we are doing that thing because we're busy. But being busy is not, you know, needle moving in a sense, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, to be honest. Because I mean, like, say if you take something like, say if doing cold DMs is an
Mm-hmm.
important part of your business, or to kickstart it anyway. Obviously, at the start, it doesn't make sense for you to just delegate that straight away because you haven't learned any of the skills that come with it. I mean, you could if you want to, if you want to delegate everything, but there's also a lot of value in you manually sending those first 100, 200, 300, 400, 500,000, however many DMs yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because in that process, you're going to learn how to do it. But then once you know the process, it doesn't really make sense for you just to be the one always doing that. When then the next high leverage thing to be doing would be to get maybe a VA and start training him to do it, or get a set and training them to do it in your basically style of way. And yeah, I think that all comes down. I heard a great like framework for leverage by Eric Jorgensen. I hope I'm saying his name right. Who wrote Almanac of Naval Ravikant. And so he
Oh,
breaks
yeah.
it down into four pillars. I don't know if you know if you've heard of this. It's in his course, but basically product, people, money, and tools. And so like product is just package of your own thought. So even like content kind of comes into product because it's like your thoughts, your beliefs packaged in, like us recording this is product because once we've done
Mm-hmm.
this hour thing, it can be sent out and whoever can listen to it completely disconnected from our time. And the same with courses and all of that sort of thing. And even tweets as well, like a thread. And then so everyone gets really caught up in that being like that's the only type of leverage. When obviously there's a lot of other types of leverage. So people. So if you run a plumbing business, you don't have digital products or an audience or anything fancy like that, but you can build up massive amounts of leverage because you start hiring people under you who can do all of your work until eventually you can just phase yourself out of the business and you've built essentially a business on people doing work and giving services. And so the entire leverage there is people. Third pillar, money. And so obviously money can be leveraged. Like everyone knows that the more money you have, the easier it is really to make more money because you can use that money and either leverage it, take loans out, invest it, anything really. And the more money you have, the more leverage you have with this. And so this is why, say, companies like Berkshire Hathaway have done so well because people like Warren Buffett can get extremely cheap or can get better loans, better interest rates on their loans essentially, and put those into other assets. And the same with banks compared to most people who don't have that level of money. And then lastly, which is one that I know you're obsessed with, is tools. And so this is
Mhm.
AI, this is automations, this is having tools that link things together or just do the work for you. And I guess this is like ChatGPT is probably technically a tool, but it's interesting because it's not a person, but it's a tool that is now starting to mimic certain aspects of that people pillar as well. So yeah, I think that I fucking love that framework for thinking about it. Because then it's like, okay, what am I actually working on? And then it also gives you an idea of what else you could be working on to increase the leverage just in your life and with your business.
Yeah, that's an interesting framework. I think I don't know if I actually is that in the Navalmanac where he talks about those four
No,
pillars,
it's
or is
in.
that his
He's got
framework?
a he's got a
That makes
course called
sense.
the Mountain of Levers, and it's inside there.
I see. What a great name too. But like yes, obviously like the tools part I've been obsessed with for since I started. Like I always just wanted to use the best tool for the best job. And then I found Notion trying to just make my own tools for like things that don't have tools yet that I want to have, which has been a whole essence of my business. But the other one is like people, like that's the one that impresses your parents, right? The type of leverage, like, oh, you have some other real person that is doing work for you. Like
Mm,
in the traditional societal sense, that's the one that is like a status symbol to a lot of people. And I think that people, at least the ones that I hear that have VAs that aren't doing what I that aren't moving, like they're just kind of stagnant. I feel like some people use that the people as a more of a status symbol than they do as something that's going to move the needle for them, because that has a lot to do with wrapped up in ego. But I just saw a lot of it in the sense of like, now that I have a VA, I'll be like texting down on my phone and somebody's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm just having my VA do X, Y, and Z. And they're like, what is that? I'm like, well, it's this. And it's really interesting to see that interaction in a social sense. Um, but obviously, it's very holistic. Like you said, people, product, money, and tools. Well, all of them, in my mind at least, kind of work together to achieve a goal, whatever goal that is, not necessarily just in business sense, but I don't think that that's talked enough about at all, like just how holistic things are. Like if you want to work 12 hours a day and make $20 million this year and you're not going to the gym 5 days a week, you're probably not going to get there. But people don't talk about that. Like there's leverage in the boringness, like the things in life that we don't talk about, especially not in like communities on social media, about like, I mean, there is a lot like taking walks, touching grass, but not in the sense of like it's all together. Like if you want the ultimate leverage, you need to think about everything, not just your business. Like you can't neglect this whole other part of your life just because you're high leveraged and focused in business and you're slacking in your personal life and you don't have any meaningful relationships. And how long do you think your business is going to last? Like I think about those things, the sense of longevity. And I don't know if you do or not, but I really like to think about things in a holistic sense. So even when we talk about, these four pillars, I think about how that can be related, and that's why I bring up the example of like the social setting. Like I just think about how everything is connected and how that affects what we're doing every day, because it does. But I don't think people ever take time to just think about it because we're so busy doing everything else.
mm. I agree with you in general, but I have two disagreements.
Oh, I
So for
love. Let's get into
starters,
it.
so I think you mentioned making what was it like 220 million or whatever a year, but not going to the gym 5 days a week, and that not being possible. Like, I think a lot of people are like can be wildly unhealthy
Okay,
and make wild
true.
amounts of money.
Hmm.
And then I also think the neglect in the personal side doesn't kill the business. It's not like how long is the business going to last? Business is probably going to do amazing, but it will kill like it will kill the personal life. It will kill your social life. Like I don't know. I
It's
think
very true.
like there's a lot of people who you hear, like I know as well, who've like will do amazing for themselves in the business world, and then just completely neglect that side. And it doesn't make their business
Hmm.
suffer, but it obviously maybe makes them a little suffer when they're like I don't know, going to bed at night or whatever, and little things
Right.
like that. But yeah, no, I agree. Like finding the balance is important, and yeah, I don't know. I guess you can apply the leverage to sort of the personal side of life as well, but at the same time, I guess like there's certain things that in my head, even the whole idea of leverage is to almost give yourself more like completely normal time in your personal life. And then it's more almost for the business side because it's like the more leverage you can be with the business, with say you're investing or anything like that, the more time you have spare to be completely unleveraged or whatever and just be present with whoever you want to be, your friends, your family, in your personal life, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, those are good points because in essence, like that is true. Like if somebody doesn't go to the gym 5 days a week, they probably still will make $20 million if they're dedicating every day to work. But I think I read in The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, he defined wealth as the ability to do whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, with whomever you want, for however long you want to. And I thought about that in the sense of like the person who isn't going to the gym 5 days a week and they're making $20 million. Like they might do that in year one, but in year two, it might be harder because they don't have the energy levels because they're not going to the gym. And then year three, year four, five, six, seven, those like how long do you think it's sustainable? I think that's what I look at things from a sustainability lens as well. Because just because you're able to do something, I think a lot of it for me has to do with peace of mind. Like if you don't have peace of mind in whatever it is you're doing, then it's really hard to be present in the moments, to have that normal time where you don't have to focus on work. Like unless you're looking at things at from a sustainability, like longevity aspect of what is best for like how is this going to affect me in 10 years, it's hard to be satisfied in the moment. At least for me it is. If I know that I'm not doing something that I should be doing. Um, and like you said, like yeah, the person will probably still make $20 million. But I think about it from like in year 10, are they still going to be able to do that because they didn't have the habits that allowed them to be consistently sustainable over a long period of time? That's where I like think about it from a holistic lens at least. Like how sustainable it is it in the long run. Are you building a life for yourself that you want to live? I don't think a lot of people think about that, especially in today's capitalistic like hustle culture mindset. People are just doing things to make money, but like money is the tool. If you're just building this tool and you don't have a resource to use that tool with, then what is like is it really useful to you then? I don't
Mm.
know. I think about it in that sense. Like, can you
Yeah,
keep it going? Is this the
I
life that
definitely
you
agree with
want to live?
I definitely agree with that. Like that's how I'd say I live my personal life. But I can also see that one, like you could do that for 10 years and still be living. Like realistically, if you just focused all your life, like maybe later on you like change your focus. But I mean like there are plenty of overweight, unhealthy people in their 50s, 60s who I'm sure have got millions and billions of pounds under the belt and are probably not being like, man, I gotta go do my bench press or whatever. I also think,
True.
yeah, I mean, for me, I think there's like a balance where like on one side I'm like, yeah, I want to make sure I go to sleep good time, I want to do this. And then sometimes I'm like, fuck it, I just like I want to focus 100% on this work. Like I was speaking to a guy, um, a very successful entrepreneur I know from Ireland, and he was telling me about a time when he got an idea for a campaign for Heineken and he got it. It was like I don't know in the afternoon at some point, and he was like just started working on it, and he worked on it throughout that entire night, all the way to the next morning, and then he messaged the contact that he had at Heineken, and he was like, "Hey, I've got an idea. Can you meet? Can you meet today, basically?" for dinner. So didn't even really have any time to sleep. Goes to meet him basically for dinner, presents this campaign that he's like planned for them, and they're like, "We love this. Let's run it." And I think it ran for like 20 years. It was like one of the longest running campaigns Heineken has ever run. And he was like, when you have inspiration like that, like just listen to it. And I think like that's another thing to also really value, because it can be easy like I've got to go to sleep here, I've got to wake up here, like productivity, blah blah blah. But like sometimes you just got to get shit done, or like you will just have inspiration, and it's not a bad thing. And because there's been times I'm working like, oh my god, it's late, I should go to bed. It's like, yeah, maybe you should, but also at the same time, you could just carry on going. And then finally, just to wrap up on like hustle culture as well. Yeah, I also don't agree with like hustle culture, working 24/7, blah blah. Like I've met one of my old kind of business partners. Before it wasn't really a business, but we were talking a lot about things and doing a few little small things together before I came to Twitter. And he had like he worked for his dad's construction company, and he would wake up at 5 a.m., cold shower, go to the gym, then he would do like some trading and some work, then he would go to construction, he'd come back, and he'd work into like 1, 2 in the morning. And that, I think, over time will just kill you, because if you do that, if it's part of your routine, you just do that day in day out, like, yeah, you're frying your brain, you're frying your body, and you're ultimately, yeah, you're going to create some long-term damage for yourself later down the line.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I think that what I really was trying to get at that you've now dismantled, but I mean, that's all right. Like, that's what I want you to do. Like, dismantle my thoughts so I can change that perspective. Is more of like optimizing for, um, I don't want to say happiness because I think that's such like a buzzword nowadays, at least. But because I think if you optimize for happiness, you just lay in bed and watch Netflix all day because like instant dopamine. But more of like optimizing for pride, like how proud are you of what you got done today? And I think that that in turn creates the peace of mind and happiness for the people that are like that guy who's working, only sleeping 4 hours a day because he's doing construction and trading and going to the gym in the morning. Like, yeah, he's probably stressed out because he's tired all the time. Like, that is not long termly sustainable. But he's probably really proud of the work he does every day. When he goes to bed at night, you could probably think about like, I'm really happy I did all of these things because he knows that he's going to better himself in the future. And even when it comes to that, like, yeah, 4 years he does that, he'll probably kill himself because he's not getting the sleep he needs. But in 4 years, if he kept doing what he's doing right now, he wouldn't be in a position where he needed to do that at all. So I don't know. It's another one of those things for me. Like, what got you here isn't going to what gets you there. Like when I was working valet 40 hours a week and doing school, I was similarly. I mean, it wasn't to that extent. It wasn't crazy, but I didn't
Hustling
have
off
the
the
time to
cars.
do
Same.
anything. Yeah, I was riding a thread, going to run a car, come back, keep riding the thread, go to get a car, come back. Like, I didn't have time to do anything else. Like, there was no balance. There was no like I didn't have time to go to the gym, or I mean I was running every day, so I used that as an excuse to justify it. But eventually, like, those activities, because I knew they were leading to what I wanted to do, made time for the things that I know I needed to be doing. So I think in a sense, if you're working towards what you want and you're really proud of what you're doing, it will come back around for you. But I don't think it's talked about. I think too many people are focused on the money they could make and not like the life they could be living. And like, don't get me wrong, I want to make money like the next guy. Like, I have very ambitious plans and goals, as I know you do. But I hate when people ask me like, what are your financial goals for the year? Like, I don't think about it like that way. I think about it in terms of lifestyle metrics. Like, how close am I to living the life that I want to live? Because money is just the tool that's going to help me get there. And like, yes, there could be a dollar amount for that, but I think that dollar amount, as soon as you get there, is always going to move. It has for me. I thought my first $5,000 month was going to be like wow, like what, like I don't really need anything else. But as you know, you get there and you're like, well, what's 10,000? And then you hit 10,000, you're like, well, 20 could be right around the corner. And then you hit 20 and you're like, well, if I had another 10 a month, I could probably do this and that. So I don't think about it in terms of in money. I think about it in terms of like what life can I be living? And at least for me, that creates bigger peace of mind because I'm not always stressing about hitting that number in a sense. Just more like living a life that's worth remembering.
Mm. I like that. I want to shift to two things. Well, I've got some
Yes.
interesting stuff I want to bring up, but I want to ask a question about Notion because I know you love Notion. I've actually using Notion less these days because I'm just using like tools, like different tools basically. And I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of like backlash towards Notion. A lot of people love Notion. Some people like it's clunky, it's terrible. Some people like it's great. Like what is your view on like Notion versus like other tools, be it things like Sunsama, like just general like task management, this sort of stuff, or like, even things like Monday.com, like the really
Yeah.
popular ones, and like what actually happens when you integrate, like this is just something I'm curious about, what actually happens when you integrate a custom built Notion system into an agency? Like, what change happens, and do they actually like stick to it, or do you find that they actually over time, like, I don't know, they don't use it so much, or they do something else? Like, yeah, what's your sort of view, Notion versus other things, and then the effect it actually has when you implement it for someone else?
Yeah. So, I mean, I talk about this a lot and I often say that like Notion's the best tool for everything, but it's not. Like Notion is not the best tool for everything. There are tools that are made like HubSpot. Like I'm not going to try to manage 1,000 email CRM in Notion just because it's not built for that specific use case. But HubSpot is. So in some use cases, there are better tools. And I think some people put themselves in a box. They're like, oh, I'm going to be a Notion guy. Like that means I'm going to do absolutely everything through Notion. And I was one of those people for a while, but eventually you realize that like some tools are just built to be tools for that use case, like HubSpot and emails, or like I don't know, anything that's not really project management. But when you talk about like Asana and Monday and all of these different things, I think that Notion is more like a mirror than anything else because you get to decide how it's running, like where the pieces go, like how it's going to function. You get to decide that. It's a reflection of how you built it. So some people aren't wired that way, and that's okay. They can use Monday.com or Asana, that they have these pre-built frameworks for you that like here it is, and then you just have to input your data. And that works for some people. But eventually you get to the point where your company is bigger than just you and your brain running everything. And that's where it gets to like I've had email marketing clients, right? Or those agencies. And the two companies that have the same deliverable at the end of the day for the same target audience have workspaces that are completely different because their organizations as a whole function differently. And if they both tried to go to Monday.com, it'd work, but it would not be effective in the sense that these teams are different. They function differently. They what's optimized for one person is not optimized for the other. So when I implement Notion workspaces for my clients, at first it's always a big learning curve because they're just learning because you're essentially like I'm essentially delivering a Monday.com to them. Like it's a custom software that's built inside Notion and they're just learning how to use it. But once everybody knows how it's running and they're starting to use the tasks and make notes and create SOPs in the knowledge base, um, they never stop. Like the workspaces that I've installed for companies, they're still using them to this day, at least to my knowledge, because once everything is running inside the system, you realize like what were you doing before? Like how did you make sure this task got scheduled and it didn't fall through the cracks, or that this SOP was available to the other project managers in order to do this, and they didn't need to message somebody on Slack and have them send a link, like they could just go find it. So once that's already up and running, I mean, it's kind of like the heartbeat of the business in a sense, because everything that you need that's going on in the day, anything that you want to create is can be done inside that workspace. So I've seen really good things from like the results, at least like the usability in terms, like everybody is fully using it, because if they didn't, there would be no way for them to get things done, because that's where everything is tracked. And at least for my clients, I've seen uh, big big differences in terms of leverage for them, because they don't need to. You often find out that once you're scaling, you almost have to spend more time managing the people doing the product than it would take you, the product, to do individually. But at scale, you're doing 50 of these a day. Like, you need to manage, make sure everybody can do it, nothing is blocked. So just having that system in place alleviates so much of the stress and daily communication that you need to have to make sure things are on top of each other. It allows people to just be autonomous and work for what works for them, and optimizing for the people with the systems, not the systems first. I've seen big results in. So I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but yeah, just putting optimizing for what works for people, not trying to cram everybody into the systems that I've already built.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I guess the like something that comes to mind like in comparison is sort of like Notion was basically introducing building blocks to people who love systems. In the
Yes.
same way that building blocks were introduced to say like a builder or like people. And then, so obviously, people who love systems then use these building blocks to make cool things, and we're like, "This is awesome." And then people who didn't know how to use those building blocks are basically like random people who are not builders who try and build their house with these blocks instead of just buying like a pre-made house. Like they're like, "Oh yeah, look at all these sick blocks. I'm gonna make my house." Obviously, because I can't build or design a house, they just build a shit house or like it's like half finished or whatever. And they would have actually just been better off just getting basically a pre-made house. Whereas if
Mm-hmm.
you're a builder and you're an architect and you actually know how to use those bricks, then it's actually a lot more useful because you can customize it to whatever you want. Like maybe you want this random thing over here, or like you want like a pool table that comes out from the floor, or I don't know, shit like that. So yeah, okay, nah, that makes complete sense to be honest. And unless you got anything to add there on the topic of optimization, um, did you listen to the podcast with Tim Ferris and Shampuri?
With Sean Puri, I thought it was with Sam Caracas about the VAs.
No, 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 no. Different one, different one.
Oh, I don't think I've listened to the one you're mentioning. Then I'm still listening to that 3 hour one with Tim Ferriss and Sam Crockus, with Tim talking about the leverage with his assistants and whatnot. That has been amazing for learning how to use that people leverage, because that's like not a skill that's ever taught in school or
Mm.
anywhere to my knowledge. I mean, I'm sure it is somewhere, but not widely and generally. So that's been really great for just learning how to use that source of newfound leverage that I have. But no, what were you referring to with Sean Puri?
So yeah, first off, that is an insane pod. We'll link that just in the show notes as well, so people can see it because it follows on from our whole convo on VAs, and it's probably the best thing. I mean, it's the first thing I sent to you after you wanted to get a VA. But no, so basically in the pod, two things that stood out to me as most interesting. So for starters, when Tim Ferriss launched his first event, he basically sold it. I can't remember how much it cost, but it was expensive. It's like Tim Ferriss' first in-person event with everyone. It spans over like a few days. He'd never done an event before. He didn't even know what he was going to present or what he was going to teach or anything like that. He sells it. It sells out. Great success. And then obviously now he's like, okay, what do I actually deliver? And obviously the normal thing to do would be like maybe you hire an events manager. You're like, okay, I'll do some presentations on this, etc., etc. But the first thing that he did is just like sit down, pen and paper, and he was like, how can I deliver greater than the value that they've paid me for this ticket within the first 15 minutes? Which I just think is such an epic question because instantly it changes how you're thinking about it to just thinking about it like as in a normal event to like, how do I make this, how do I think completely different to what a normal events person would be, to give like the entirety of their ticket that they've paid for this literally within the first 15 minutes. And then I think what he decided to do in the end was, the first thing he was like, I'm giving you everything I've used to launch my books. So the exact marketing strategy, how I went about writing the books, how I released them, how I like built hype for them, all of this sort of thing. He was like, I'm giving it to you, like I'm giving everything to you. And then he was like, I want every single one of you to get up in this stage and basically flex, like brag, like just show off, like say what you've done, or like what do you do, like your biggest achievements, and don't just like be humble about it, like genuinely like say your biggest achievements, and then finish that up with something that you need or like a request, and then something that you can just give or give away. And so he did that in the very start of the presentation. So once this was all done, instantly everyone had said after that, after the first day, like this is one of the best they've ever been to in their life, because obviously tons of smart people have paid for this ticket, tons of people have met each other, deals, connections, whatever, and they're getting his entire system. And so yeah, I just love that idea of how can you boil the success of what you're doing down to literally one question to make you think differently. So you can even do it like, say if you're launching a product, it's like, what can I do to make it almost like ridiculously improbable that this would fail? Like, what would I have to do
Mm-hmm.
for this literally to be impossible to fail? And which also follows on the idea, I can't remember what Sean said it, but like questions are literally like the pickaxes for your brain. Like they are actually what allow you to get to what you need. Yeah, which I just absolutely loved and thought was awesome.
Yeah, that I mean, I feel like I've heard for so long now that like if you want better answers, ask better questions, right? Like seems simple enough, but like that really illustrates how good of an answer you can get based on the question you're asking. Because I hear that and I'm immediately like, well, yeah, I mean, anybody who comes to that event is going to have the best time ever because you asked such a great question that allowed you to come up with this answer to, provide value for these people.
Mm.
And that applies to so many things, I feel like. I think I hear Alex Hermosi talk about that question when it comes to like marketing and business a lot. Like, what question could I ask that makes this so highly improbable for the thing not to work out? Like, that's what I should be doing. Like, if anybody's ever read the book $100 Million Offers, I think the first page of it is like,
I actually
make a
haven't read
deal so good. Of course you haven't. Of course. Oh my
it.
God. I don't even like know what to do with myself right now. I don't. I'm gonna like ship you this book. But like literally the first page, it's a quote. I forget who it's by, but it says, "Make a deal so good people would feel stupid saying no to," and that is very similar to the question you asked, or the question that Tim asked before he launched his event. Like, how can I make this so good that people would feel all of the value that they got within the first 15 minutes? Like just applying that irrational framework to get a really rational answer. I mean, it's paradoxical, but I feel like most things in life tend to be a little counterintuitive.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. Coming on to that as well with the offers, that's literally what we did when we did the first cohort offer. Literally, I just remember sending voice notes all day. It's like, what can we put in this offer to make it literally 10x like its value, like ridiculously good that people will be like, I just have to have this. And so it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
we can do this, oh, we can do that. And like half of them are like absolute bollocks. But once you go through the list, there'll be a few gems which are like, that actually isn't that hard to deliver, but will bring like, will is extremely desirable for someone to have. And there's another part of the pod that I love. So, what do you think is the most important part of a podcast?
The most important part,
If you're the host, and you're interviewing.
if I'm the host. Is it from the perspective of like producing the show from the host, or the perspective of from the audience, like how good the show is in the sense of entertainment value, etc.?
Yeah, both basically. Like just how
Both.
good the podcast is, basically. How good the episode is.
Okay. I think in terms of how good the episode is, it comes down to, because I've listened to a lot of podcasts, and I'm sure you have, and there are some good ones and there are some bad ones. But I think it comes down to like the personalities of the people that you're listening to. Like if you don't like these people, then you're not gonna like, even if you are the biggest because I've listened to some systems podcasts and some of the guys are just so boring. Like, even if you are the biggest systems fan in the world, if the people you're listening to are boring as rocks, then it's going to be hard for you to enjoy that episode. Doesn't matter how interested you are in systems, at least in my opinion. And
Yeah.
like the chemistry of the people talking, like, especially when it comes to like people who do interviews with guests, sometimes you can tell that like the interviewee and the guest is they're really disconnected and it feels awkward. So you're making like having good chemistry and conversation is really important, I think, for a good episode. And then as far as the production, I think
Right.
that
I'm gonna stop you there because you're close.
stop me there.
But the
Okay.
question is a trick question.
Is a trick question.
Yeah.
Of course it
So the
is.
most important part is actually the 5 minutes before the podcast even starts, is what Tim was saying.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
And so it's amazing. Like you don't even really think about this, but he was like, obviously, how good a pod is how relaxed the person you're interviewing is. The more relaxed, if
Yeah.
you can get them to be like ridiculously relaxed, like they're just lounging at home with a glass of wine, that's when you're going to get the best stuff out of them. And so what he will do is he will do like a bunch of things where he will make it clear, like before they kick off, he was like, look, I've got a whole team. You can say anything, whatever. We will go through it all. You can let us know whether you want anything taken out, edited, cut, whatever, so that you don't need to worry about saying something that's wrong or dropping a name. We have people who will scan just to make sure you haven't said anything wrong like that. So, boom. First off, like, would never even think about that. But obviously, that someone just instantly be like, Tim is literally like, I know what I'm doing. I know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, you can calm down, sort of thing. I've done this before. And then we'll
Mm-hmm.
do things like, okay, do you have any like highlight stories that you love to tell? And then they'll be like, yeah, yeah, like this. And so then he will like weave those in. He will weave those in basically just near the start. So they're comfortable. It's a story they've told often. They know it's good, basically. The other thing you'll also like have, if they've done a lot of podcasts, he will have like listened to a load of them and then make sure to do one that's like completely different. It's not like, oh, can you tell me a little about yourself and do an intro? He will dig deep into like some facts that they don't really know, and then obviously surprise the other person. And so there's loads of little things like that. But yeah, I love that because there's not really something you think about. It's like, hey, what are all the questions I'm going to ask? Like, how am I going to guide it? All this sort of thing. Because I did one interview podcast like last year, basically. Oh no, almost 2 years ago. Yeah, just over a year ago. And I remember like the thing I was worrying about most was the questions. Basically, it's like, where am I going to take this? Am I going to run out? But obviously, the most important part is literally that 5 minutes when you first get talking to someone to try and get them just as chill, relaxed out as you can, and you want to make them feel that this is actually different. Oh, that's the other question he asks. He was like, what would this podcast have to be like, or what would actually have to happen over the next hour for this to be, oh, come on, when it sells, not like just worthwhile, but be like something that you were like, wow, I'm really glad that I produced that or I got that out, or sort of thing. Or to this basically be like an abnormally large success or something like that, which I think is another great way just to see what the person who's being interviewed actually wants. Because they've obviously said yes to being on this interview. Like, do they want to get a certain message across? Do they want to promote something from their business? Etc. etc. So yeah, Tim's obviously a beast and been in this like creator game for way longer, and so just love those two little things from him.
Yeah, I mean, the 5 minutes before you get on a call, I think that's more important than at first I realized, but just in general. Like even before we clicked record, we're chatting for 10, 15 minutes, just catching up. But like what that really does, and especially for people that you're meeting for the first time, is just building that initial rapport that like this is who I am and this is who you are, and we can have a conversation. Because if you just immediately jump into it, at least I remember like my first few networking calls or my first call with a lead, like oftentimes you can get nervous and you're like, you want to just jump right into it. But now at least when I get on a call with a new lead, like the first 5-10 minutes of that call aren't, okay, so like, what are your operations like? Like, show me the tools. Like, it's like, oh, where are you calling from? What were you doing today? How was your weekend? Just finding things that you can relate to together Because if somebody can relate to you and relate to you as a human being, they're 10 times more likely to work with you versus if you come off as this like robotic, like, so introduce yourself. What do you do? Who are you? Like, that's so much more important than we realize. And I didn't even really even know that I was doing it until you bring that up. Like, the more important part is the 5 minutes before, like where you're actually humans. I think that is really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have anything in particular you want to talk about? Because if not, I've got a few more things that I want to share.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up one thing and ask you a question because like there's at least, I've been studying, I don't know if I want to say studying, but just in the productivity world a lot with tools and frameworks and methodologies that people use to get things done. And when it comes to doing tasks, actually getting things done, there seems to be two main methods of tracking this and getting things done in the day. You either have a to-do list or you have a calendar. And I want to know which one you are, or if that changed, or how has that evolved as you've grown in your business. You're doing more things now, you have to keep track of more things. Because for me it's definitely changed over time, and just learning more about myself. And I'm not going to tell you which one I did or used to do and what I do now. I want to hear what you're going to say first,
Yeah, yeah.
and then tell you why
I
it's wrong.
I tell you why it's shit. It's neither of those. No shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is actually this is I love this question because it's something that I've thought about a lot, and it's genuinely I found it annoying when I felt like I didn't have a proper like system for managing tasks. Like
Mm-hmm.
I went through like to get things done. I like tested out loads of different methods, like complicated one. Uh, when I was in my when I was in my 9 to 5, I would just have like a sheet of paper and I would just write things down. And I would just write everything out that I need to do and then just cross off. And I think this is what my granddad apparently used to do. He would just have a long list, and every single day he would make himself manually write out the entire list and then cross them out basically. And he was a builder, but also a successful. He was a builder businessman basically, and did really well for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I've basically bounced between that. I've tried writing on lists. I've tried loads of tools, and now I actually then one of the I used Google Calendar for a long time. So actually just having the tasks inside Google Calendar, because I way preferred having a calendar because I was like, I can see my week, I can just put tasks there, I can move them around. But obviously Google Calendar is also not the nicest task management tool. And
Mm-hmm.
then I was speaking to Adam Lincolnalga, who is the founder of the biggest basketball training YouTube channel in the world. He partners with he owns like a bunch of other huge YouTube channels. He's basically like a YouTube absolute animal, and he partners with a lot of people. He coaches people, and so he's responsible for some of the biggest YouTube channels in a lot of niches. And he loves systems as well. And his favorite thing is Sunsama. And so I was like, okay, I'll check this out. And now I pretty much just only use Sunsama, to be honest, because I don't see the point in having I don't see the point in having a lot to dos for like basic household chores. I honestly just find that
Yeah.
annoys me. What I use for general chores are just I use alarms actually. My friends find it so
Same.
annoying because my phone will just
No, I do
like ping
too.
off. If there's something I need to do later on, like I don't know, take the laundry out, hang it up,
Yep.
whatever, to get shopping, I will just set an alarm, and there's no way that that doesn't go off. Like it's not like a reminder or anything like that. So all household
Mm-hmm.
basic stuff, I use an alarm, and then everything to do with the business, I use Sunsama because it's basically like a great to-do list. It's basically like a to-do list task management thing, but with a calendar. So you can have your main task, you can have subtasks, and then you can attach those to certain categories. And then the best part is you can literally just drag and drop so easily over a calendar interface, which is usually just a week, which I love because I can literally just see, okay, how does my week look? How can I divide things? And then I can also drag them from like the do list bit onto a specific time. So when I want, I can time block it out. And then usually what I will do, first thing I do before I get to work, I look at like, okay, this is like the wall of shit that I need to do. I'm like, okay, is there anything I need to add here? I'm like, okay, no, okay, it looks all good. And then I'll be like, okay, what is the one thing that if I got done today, like classic question, like it wouldn't even matter if I didn't do anything else. Like, what's that
The one big thing.
one thing? Yeah, what's the one thing? If I get that done, I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, sick. I'm actually just happy, even if I don't get anything done. And then I'll highlight one of those, and then I'll just smash that in 2 hour block. I have a great timer app on my Mac. I tried like the Pomodoro shit, all that sort of thing. I found it didn't really work for me because like sometimes I can sit down and just focus for like 2, 3 hours straight, and other times I'll only focus for like 30 minutes. So I was like having like 20 minutes on, an hour off, or whatever. Like it didn't really make sense to me. So
Yeah.
now what I do, I just give myself a time that I want to finish something, and then I just stick that timer on, and then I can see it on the top of my Mac, and it's just slowly ticking down, which gives me that little bit of urgency. And then I just get into a task, and I'm like, as long as that time is going and I'm on this task, like just try not really to get distracted by anything else. And so yeah, to be honest, that's my system at the moment.
Okay, I guess I'm not going to tell you it's completely wrong. And I mean, wrong is subjective. Like, everybody works differently for what works for them. But I've recently come off of like, so Notion released a new app in their like product suite, Notion Calendar.
Notion,
And that's
Notion,
been,
Notion.
yeah, right. Well, I mean, I track all of my tasks and projects there. So it makes sense that I bring it up. Um,
Not only
but
kidding.
so to bring it full circle, like I used to track all of my tasks like that, just as a list. But what I've realized is I tend to be overly optimistic about what I think I can get done in a day.
I
And
don't
that
think that's you.
stresses me the fuck out. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure most people are. People like us, like, that stresses me the fuck out. And I am also like a perfectionist in a sense. I mean, things don't need to be perfect for me to get it done. But if I feel like I won't be able to do it fully or completely or like in the way that I want to, like I feel like I can't even start it. So if I have like this mountain of list of things to do and this ambiguous time to get it done, um, it's hard. I'll get less done than I would if I only had two or three things on the list. So with that being said, like I'll track all of my tasks in Notion now, but then I'll go to Notion Calendar, and since it syncs up really nice with my task database, I can see all of my tasks now at the top of the day, and I can drag them into the time slot where I think I'll get them done and allocate time for that. So now I can visually see like I'm going to spend an hour on this task, and what Sam Crockus was mentioning in the Tim Ferriss podcast, he said that if you do that, you're able to retroactively go back and look like this empirical data. Like, this is what I said I was going to do in this time slot. What did I actually do? How long did this actually take me? And you get better at realizing how long something is going to take you. Um, and for me, that's been a big switch of like blocking out on my calendar when I'm going to do something. How long do I think it's going to take me? Instead of having 6 tasks to do today with how long it could take me. I don't know. Like it feels way more daunting in a sense. And I have not tried out this tool you're using called, what is it, Sensama? Am I saying that
Yeah,
right?
that's armor. I love it.
I'll have to check that out. It looks interesting. I've seen a lot of tools or coming up now with like AI time tracking for tasks and all of these different things. And I haven't seen, like, you sent me one the other day, but I haven't seen anything that's super great. But I mean,
Nice.
I'd love to check out all tools and see if there's something that can work for me better. I saw this one. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Motion, like
No,
Notion but with an M. And there must be doing some crazy ad campaigns because like I cannot not see them anytime I go on any social media. Like they're putting in the budgeting marketing dollars and I am their target audience. Like I keep seeing it.
yeah, and I haven't checked them out. No, I think so. Yeah, I think that's everyone always overestimates what they want. And I had a friend who I met in Athens when I was back there, and he runs
Hmm.
a UGC, so user generated content creative agency. And he was also like he was a bit of a hustler, like productivity guy, blah blah blah, all this sort of thing. Like his phone is locked
Hmm.
him out of everything, like everything's black and white. like lock screen was like 100K a month because he was like, I'm just putting my goal, like all this stuff. But when I see him, he was always a
So we
bit
know the type.
tired. Yeah, he was always tired, and I was like, man, like,
Weird.
what time do you wake up? And he was like, oh, like 8. And I was like, oh, what time do you go to sleep? And he was like, oh, like 2. And I'm like, why did you go to sleep so late? And he was like, well, I don't let myself leave any tasks unfinished that I said I'm going to do that day. So if he says he's going to do like these 3 tasks, then he's like, I am not allowed to go to sleep until I actually get these done. And so he just always ends up staying up way later than he wants. And I respect the system, and there's a part of me who thinks maybe that does work, because it's obviously like, if you know there's a punishment, you're not going to overestimate. You're actually going to be serious. I'm going to get these done. And then you get used to doing what you said you're going to do. Because I think the danger
Yeah.
is like getting used to just moving tasks over the time, over time. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how procrastination comes about. But at the
Hmm.
same time, I'm like, I feel like what I would just end up doing, I would just end up staying up late. like,
Every day. Yeah.
and so I think now, yeah, now what I'm finding better is like, I will have my work period where I go to a cafe or a workspace, and I will have, say, 3, 4 hours there, and I'm like, I just have to get my highlight task done there. I might do some things when I get back later on, but like, that's my period just to get out the one big thing. So I won't try and overestimate. I'll have the list of all the things that I want to do, and then just pick out like one thing that I really want to get done. And I find that works quite well.
Yeah. I was one of those people too that used to stay up till 2 in the morning. I mean, I still do sometimes. And I think that that's good in some senses. For I think it's more of like a learning tool more than anything. For it should be for most people, like getting used to doing what you say you're going to do, like as a fundamental principle. Like that's a good thing to have, and discipline really is what that is. But in another sense, I think that that's more conducive long term to burnout more than anything. Like if you do that over the next 5 years, you're probably going to burn out and you're going to get tired. Like that sounds, I mean, I've experienced it. So I know that you can burn out if you work like that. However, it is good to do the things you say you're going to do. But in a realistic sense, if you're putting 50 things on your plate every day, you're not going to be able to do every single one of them. So it's more, for me, it's more about like prioritization, like what is the most important thing, get those things done, and then what are like the scraps like that I could be doing, but they're not time dependent, like I don't need to get it done. And just giving yourself a little bit of grace, but not to the point where you're not holding yourself accountable. Like everything in life, it's a balance that you should walk. um Extreme ends work for some people, but I don't know how long, how sustainable do you think that is? Like over the next 10 years, this guy, do you think he's going to be going to bed at 2 every night and waking up at 8 and being tired? Like,
Well, I think he doesn't
don't
want to
you
go to
feel like
bed
it's
at
going to catch up to him?
he doesn't want to go to bed at 2. He wants to go to bed at like 10, 11. So I think
Right.
if he can bring it forward. I mean, the other thing as well, it's like the it's one of those things as well that if he just gets tired for too long, he'll probably just have to stop it, right? Like it's not going to be
Yeah.
like 10 years, drives himself into the ground, gets a heart attack. Like that's the beauty of also being young. Like it'll probably be more like in a few months, he's like, I'm actually friggin' knackered, and this isn't scalable. Um, knackered, mate. I honestly have no idea why you do not have never heard the word knackered. I swear it's a common English word. Tired.
Yeah, well, I never say bloody hell either, but I hear
Oh yeah,
people say that.
I guess it's British. I've got a final interesting thing to mention that keeps I keep seeing now that I've heard it, and it was from a marketer who
Hmm.
it's basically I have a few people that I look up to who are like way ahead of me. They've been like in the game for 10 years, and then obviously they have people that they look up to, who they like are like, oh my god, this guy's amazing. And so I think those people who they think is amazing are always really really interesting. And so one of those people is Travis Sargo, who, as I said, one of these guys who's helped us out. Wasn't an official mentor, but he's always been there for us. Really, really loves and told us to check out. And his main thing that he wants you to think about, or he gets people to think about when you join his program, is this one word which he says is responsible for literally everything that he's done, all the money he's made. And I really hope I'm remembering the word right because I wrote this down ages ago, but utilization. And so what he means by that is all the money he's made has been from finding situations where something is unutilized and then utilizing it at no risk to whoever, say, owns it. And so an example of this is, say, Airbnb. And so
Mm-hmm.
Airbnb is like a rental company that doesn't own any houses. I think they maybe own a few properties now, but in general, they don't own any houses. What they did is utilized all the empty rooms in everyone else's house and made it easy for those people to basically rent those rooms out, utilize those rooms, and then take a share of the profits. And so the money then is there's no risk really to the person doing the Airbnb. There's no risk to Airbnb. You're just basically saying, hey, why don't you utilize that? Obviously, there are some risks, but in general, it's like a win-win agreement. Then after he mentioned that, like Uber's the same as well. Instead of just having your car lying
Mm-hmm.
around and you've got some spare time, maybe you can just drive people around and utilize the car and that time and start making some more money. And then obviously some people now do that as their entire job. And then I think it's almost like this is almost one of the easiest ways just to even I think about seeing opportunities because then there's another pizza company which I heard My First Million guys talk about Sampa and Shampuri. I think it was Shampuri brought it up. And what they basically did in sort of the more rural areas in the US where maybe there's not a Domino's, there's not many restaurants spread around, but there's a lot of like just regular like spa stores, that sort of thing. Just regular like small shops, fuel refilling fuel, whatever you mine's mush. But anyway, so what this company does, they are like Domino's in that they made a brand, a pizza brand, a frozen pizza brand, and not frozen pizza. It's a pizza brand which they basically allow anyone to franchise. And so, say if I own a gas station, all
Oh,
I
I
have to
have
do
heard
is
of
buy
this.
pizza brand, 10 grand, and I
Mm-hmm.
basically get everything that I need to set up and start selling pizzas from my shop. The cool
Mm-hmm.
part is I don't pay any fees after that. So once I've got everything set up and I'm selling pizzas, I don't pay any commissions or anything like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then where the company makes money is obviously you make some money from the initial setup, but where they make the money is then selling the ingredients for the pizza to the companies,
Yep.
which I
Yeah.
thought was awesome because once again you're utilizing the space in that gas station to selling you creating a win-win in a place where there's no pizzas or no one else is going to bother really setting up a restaurant. And it's also
Mm-hmm.
relevant in one of the recent things I'm doing. So partnering with two guys who've got some really big connections with Instagram and TikTok creators. And these creators have got like 100,000 up to like a few million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million followers, and they're doing nothing with them. They've just got these followers, they do some brand deals here and there, they do some posts, they do stuff like that, but they're not doing anything. So what these guys are doing is one, they've just putting them in a little community together, and two, they're like, okay, we want to do your back in marketing, we want to launch a newsletter for you, we want to sell some things, and all we want in return is just some sales. And that's obviously a simpler version. You see that everywhere. It's just a classic partnership. But yeah, I just love that idea of just looking around you and thinking, how can I utilize whatever it is you're looking at to become more useful? And so, say, for example, if you see an old farmer who's got a field that he doesn't use anymore because he's too old to do farming, well, if you wanted to, you could be like, hey, man, I want to start a campsite and whatever on your farm. You don't have to do anything. I just want to build it up and then I'll give you like X amount of the profits, or I'll just pay you a bit of the rent, whatever, once it's all set up. And then maybe if you set up like that, you don't even need to pay to initially get the field or anything like that, or even pay rent until you actually make enough money. Because maybe if you give them enough, you can just sort of profit share. So yeah, that's my food for thought for the end of today, to be honest.
I don't know where I heard that too, but I remember hearing about that. And that's the most successful pizza chain ever, or so far, if I'm not mistaken. That whole
I don't
model
know
with that
about ever,
company.
but they're one of the fastest growing. I think. I don't think they're as big as Domino's or something like that, but yeah, I think the fastest growing. Um, yeah, wow, such a clever idea.
It for me it ties back into the statement you talked about with like asking better questions, getting better answers. Like this is different. I think that's why it worked so well, because it's not like the subscription. Like I think people in general, like we go through these cycles. So like for a long time it's been SaaS. Like people, but now people are getting sick of paying for monthly fees. So I think we're going to see a trend that goes back towards like one-time purchases. And then eventually people will get sick of that and we'll go back to SaaS. So I don't know. I just think it's interesting that we're seeing something that's so different from the status quo work so well. And I think we're going to see that apply in a lot more areas as like society as a whole gets sick of the way things have been done for so long.
Yeah, no, agreed. Cycles are literally everywhere with that. And yeah, even here, I think some SaaS companies are even just offering to, I think it's 37 signals. They're thinking of doing something where you can literally just buy the SaaS, you own the SaaS. It's like a basic version of it, but instead of just paying an expensive monthly fee, because maybe you've got hundreds of employees, that or even thousands, you can literally just buy basically like a minimal version of the SaaS, and I guess almost like adapt it to how you want as like your own notion, basically.
Yeah, but and this is like I'm sure for a lot of people this is going to sound like some
What are
novel
you laughing
concept, but
about?
like this is how it was done for so long. And now we're just going back to it. Like this is just how it
Right.
was. And
What
some
is
things
old
work great
new
for
again?
SaaS, but uh what was that?
What is old is new again?
Yep. Yeah. I mean there's nothing new under the sun. Like this has been done before, it will be done again, and eventually somebody will come up with the idea of like, wait, so people are just buying this as a whole, but what if we made it cheaper and they just paid us every month? Like I guarantee that eventually that's what it's going to go back to. Like I don't know. It
Yeah,
just I think this whole conversation has really forced myself to ask better questions to find the new
yeah.
perspective, because that's really all it takes sometimes to make that needle move. Ask a better question.
Aye, always. Anyway, should we give it a wrap there?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Awesome. We should. Yeah, we'll just keep doing pods like this. In future, we'll try and get in some guests for you guys, but yeah,
Hmm.
so you don't have to just listen to us ramble all the time. But for now, we'll just get better at rambling and take it from there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, me and Tats are just learning right now, and we appreciate you guys learning with us. Yeah, we'll have guests eventually. We're just figuring it out. Um, and so yeah, leave questions. We're happy to answer all questions in the comments. Give us some talking points. But for now, you can just hear our lovely voices ramble on until the next time. Episodes will be up every Tuesday on YouTube, Apple Music, and Spotify at the moment, but we'll be expanding to other channels. But yeah, for now, that concludes our conversation.
Yeah, wicked. Give it a follow, subscribe or whatever.
Five
Share it,
stars.
comment, anything like that. Anything that gives us some engagement, we'd love that. And see you next week. Thank you.
Yes, definitely.
Woo!
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yo, it's time to build leverage, stack up your advantage. Life and business, time to manage, never stay stranded. Start with the vision, mission, plan of attack. Keep your eyes on the prize, no looking back.